What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? We got episode 33 of the Be Great podcast coming to you here today. I'm actually recording this on Monday for a number of reasons. Number one being I have a busy week ahead of me. Number two being that today is the official first day of the transfer portal. So we have been getting a ton of news about players entering the transfer portal. We'll talk about a few of them. A few predictions have already been set for some transfer portal individuals, but we will get into that. But first, we have to get into the big news, and that's the college football playoff rankings that were released on Sunday. That's the championship weekend was a blast. My Georgia Bulldogs got it done in overtime with Gunnar Stockton. We'll talk about Gunnar Stockton, talk about the Carson Beck injury. It is a UCL injury. It's looking like Carson will be out for the entirety of the playoffs as of right now. So it's Gunnar season. We'll get into how the bracket shakes up, who's blessed, who's not. Let's just get into it. So, championship weekend. It started off with Arizona State versus Iowa State. Cam Scadaboo absolutely annihilated Iowa State. I watched a majority of that football game. Neo with a terrible halftime performance, but that's okay. Can't win them all, Neo. And Arizona State really, solidified their spot in this playoff. They went out and they dominated Iowa State for 4 quarters. The game was never close, and they looked really impressive. And look, I don't have any delusions that Arizona State's a contender to win the Natty, but could they make that matchup in the second round interesting with whoever makes it between Texas and Clemson? I think so. I think they can make it interesting for a few quarters, and that's really all you can ask for. Then you had Georgia, Texas, my team, the Georgia Bulldogs. The first half was not surprising. I expected a defensive slugfest, and that's exactly what we got, especially in the first half. The offense continues to absolutely blow my mind with how awful it manages to be on a weekly basis. And the defense played really well. They had the bend but not break mentality. Dalen Everett continues to be Texas's father. He continues to have to make sure that Quinn Ewers is his son. And I thought Daniel Harris, yes, he got picked on, but that's going to happen. He's not perfect, and I don't need him to be perfect. I just need him to be better than that bum Julian Humphrey. And guess what? He is. The things Matthew Golden would have done to Julian Humphrey, I mean, you could make felony charges against him with what he would have done. Okay? So Daniel Harris, he held his own. Okay? Yeah, he allowed a few explosive plays. That's going to happen. It's okay. Matthew Golden is better than him. That's just the reality. But he managed it. He managed it. He didn't allow touchdowns to happen, and he managed it. You got to talk, though, about the performance of Gunnar Stockton. It's funny. I went and I took a shower at halftime, and I saw that Carson Beck got injured. I fully expected him to come out and still be the quarterback for the second half. And I get out of the shower, and Georgia had already had their first drive with Gunnar where they scored a touchdown, but I didn't know it yet. And all I see immediately when I get out of the shower is I see a text from my dad on my phone saying that Gunnar looks good out there. And I'm like, what do you mean Gunnar looks good out there? What are you talking about? And I look at my phone, look up the score, and it's 10-7, and Gunnar Stockton's putting on a master class, and I'm like, what is happening? Look, I have not said this on this podcast. I have had my doubts and worries about Gunnar in the little that I've seen him play. I don't think he's a great thrower of the football. And I believe that you need to be that at the quarterback position. I think his throwing motion is super slow and way too long. You saw that when Texas sent a massive blitz on him and he got blown up. His release is just super slow, super long, and I don't love it. It looks almost awkward when he throws the football. Um, but I can tell you this: I have to give him credit for the way he played in that second half. He wasn't perfect, and he wasn't. I don't even know if you could call him necessarily great, but he showed heart and he showed passion. And at the end of the day, he got the job done, and that's all you can really ask for. He went out there, had a tremendous first drive, and then, he was not very good. He had one of the worst interceptions and one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in my entire life. But at the end of the day, this is his first SEC opponent that he's ever faced. And it's in the SEC championship against a very good Texas defense. And he clearly got rattled and panicked. And so, that stuff's going to happen. I think Georgia should feel very blessed that they won that game, because now you're sitting here with 3 weeks to, kind of add plays to the playbook that are specific to Gunnar Stockton, some read options to use his mobility. Um, and he gets 3 weeks to really prepare for this matchup against whoever they face in the second round, most likely Notre Dame. And so I think that greatly benefits Georgia. It also benefits them that they also are able to kind of focus more on the transfer portal, because they have 3 weeks, obviously, until they play again. And we'll get to a couple of names I've heard that are possibly going to the Georgia Bulldogs in the transfer portal. As far as Texas is concerned, Texas, the issue that they had in the SEC championship game, it was the exact same issue that they had in the first appearance against Georgia, and that was quarterback. Quinn Ewers, it is very clear to me that Quinn Ewers almost doesn't trust himself, and it's also very clear to me that he gets very rattled when he plays a good team, and he's almost overthinking it. And it also is clear to me that it seems like Steve Sarkisian is, it almost feels like he doesn't want to hurt Quinn's feelings by just putting Arch in. That's what it feels like to me as well. And, I saw a rumor today that Quinn might come back for another year. I mean, if he does that, he's going to have to transfer. I don't see Steve Sarkisian giving this man another year at quarterback, wasting another year of Arch Manning. Because if I'm Arch Manning, if they do that, I'm transferring. I'm sorry. I can't just sit here for 3 years. Like, come on now. But another thing with Quinn, he seems to always just float the ball. It never is a dart. It's never just coming at you. It's always just a lob. It just floats in the air. And that's a big reason why he got picked twice on balls to the outside on Dalen Everett. Because the ball looks like it takes 5 years to get to the receiver. On a comeback route, you can't let that happen. Okay? Carson, he will zip that thing in there. Maybe that's why Arian Smith is so trash and can't catch it. I don't know. Maybe he'd do better with Quinn. Gosh, Arian Smith, he just drives me up a wall. I can't stand him. Anyways, but that was Texas's problem. It was 100% Texas's problem. Another problem, which was also a problem in the first appearance, they can't run the ball. Their offensive line once again got absolutely decimated by the Georgia defensive line. And Texas fans, you can't use the excuse that, we didn't have Kelvin Banks, who is who's their best offensive tackle. He'll be a probably top 10 pick in the NFL draft, in my opinion. You can't make that excuse, because you had Kelvin Banks for the first appearance against Georgia, and it didn't help. You got sacked just as many times, 6 on Saturday. I mean, that offensive line and that run game was absolutely atrocious, and it felt like whoever was going to be able to establish the run was going to win. And Georgia ran for over 100 yards, and they ended up winning. Texas didn't even run the ball for for 40 yards. I think they ran it for 30-something. I mean, you will not beat elite teams if you cannot run the ball. You just won't. It's not going to happen. But overall, I thought it was. I mean, it was Kirby Smart doing typical Kirby Smart things. The fake punt was a tremendous decision. It was a ballsy play, a ballsy decision, and it ended up working out. And I think that's really when the momentum shifted to Georgia once again, because I feel like it had gone back to Texas after they scored that touchdown. Then Georgia has a bad drive, and with their backup punter in, and he runs a fake punt, which was shocking, but I'm super glad that he did it. I think it was massive for the game. Um, and then at night, you had Clemson and SMU, and you had Penn State, Oregon. I was impressed that Penn State stuck around as long as they did with Oregon, tried to make that a game. Their offense looked way better than it has all season, but the problem is their defense looked about as bad as it has looked all season. And that's a problem. I think Penn State, look, they got a good draw in the playoff bracket, but I still, like, honestly, I'm just being completely honest. It would not shock me if SMU beat Penn State. I'm just going to be honest. And I wasn't that impressed with SMU in their ACC championship game for obvious reasons. You get down early and by a lot to Clemson early on in that game, and you're having to claw your way back the entire time. SMU looked terrible in the first half, and in the second half, they looked a lot better and looked like they had some life. Uh, um, eh, I worry that SMU is going to have to go up to Penn State and try and win that game. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. I just don't think they're talented enough right now. I think that Penn State defense will be able to shut them down enough to for them to get that win. Um, but it was at least a good performance from Penn State and a good performance from SMU. By the way, all the Power Four conference championship games I predicted correctly. You're welcome. But you just gotta listen to me sometimes. But it is what it is. Yeah, Boise State obviously beat UNLV to clinch their spot in the playoff. They're the 3 seed. But let's take a closer look at this playoff. Okay. So I think let's start with the obvious, the big discussion that was going on Sunday, and that was Alabama or SMU. Where do I stand? What did I want? It's difficult because you have to have a conversation within yourself about, okay, are we doing who's the best team, or are we doing who deserves it? You know, which are we going with? And look, I don't mind which way the committee wants to go. If they want to go with the best, if they want to go with the deserving, all I ask is that you just be consistent. Um, and I actually felt like they were consistent with the ranking that they ended up giving us. I think SMU was the right choice. And I'll tell you why. Do I think Alabama had a harder schedule? Absolutely. Of course. Of course, you had Georgia on that schedule, South Carolina on that schedule, Tennessee on that schedule. But here's my problem. You cannot complain about SMU playing a bunch of nobodies who aren't very good and how you would have ran through their schedule and gone undefeated when you lost to Vanderbilt by letting Vanderbilt score 40 points on you, by the way, and you got blown out against Oklahoma and only scoring 3 points. I have a hard time feeling bad for you when, yeah, the Tennessee loss it's a good loss. I mean, it's a fine loss. They're ranked. They're in the playoff. But you have a loss to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. The Oklahoma loss being a blowout. I find it hard to have sympathy for you. I really do. Okay, I find it hard to have sympathy for Ole Miss. You had your chance. All you had to do was beat Florida, and you dropped the ball. It's on you. Don't come sit here and tell me, oh, but Florida, they're so good. They're so look how they ended the season. I don't want to hear it. They were unranked. They are still unranked. They were a 7-5 football team, and you couldn't beat them with how talented your roster was. So I don't want to hear it. I don't. I don't want to hear your pity party. Miami, the fact that Miami was even a conversation is a joke. They have two terrible losses to Georgia Tech and Syracuse, and they easily could have had 2 or 3 more losses. And they don't play defense. It's a joke. They're a joke. I also feel like people were looking at it all wrong. They were saying, okay, 9-3 Alabama, 11-2 SMU. That's not the committee told you that's not it. In reality, what you're comparing is 9-3 Alabama to 11-1 SMU. Because I don't believe, and the committee told you this, committee told you that they were not going to punish a team who loses their conference championship because they played an extra game compared to someone who wasn't in the conference championship. So what you're actually comparing is the regular season. You're comparing a 9-3 to an 11-1. And if you look at it that way, it's no contest. It's a mute point. Mute point. That's the reality. The fact that they had SMU ahead of Bama at the end of the regular season, 11-1, 9-3, it was pretty much done from that point. I think the only way Bama gets in is if SMU would have gotten blown out. Like, I think if that game would have ended how it started, then I could have seen Alabama coming in at the 11. But at the end of the day, you have no one to blame but yourself. The loss to Vanderbilt, the loss to Oklahoma are both inexcusable. Inexcusable. And the fact that you want to sit here and you want to act like you just because you're Alabama, that you deserve, you're entitled to a playoff spot is laughable and ridiculous. And I think it's about time that the committee finally stood up to that. Because if Alabama would have gotten in over SMU, honestly, look, do I think Alabama's better than SMU? I do. But again, is it about who the 4 best? Sorry, we're not at 4. Is it about who the 12 best teams are? No, you can tell it's not about who the 12 best teams are. Boise State and Arizona State are in this playoff. Clemson's in this playoff. It's not about the 12 best teams. It never has been. Even when it was 4, it was never about the 4 best teams. Because if it was about 4 best teams, Georgia would have been in last year. That's the reality. We had 1 loss in the SEC championship by 3 points. It's never been about the best teams. It's always been, I think, majority about the most deserving, mixed in a little bit with who's with the best team. I think they really only consider who's better if the records are close. Like, I think if SMU would have been 11 or 10-2 after the regular season, then okay. I can see a 2-loss team, 3-loss team. You can go between that and decide who's better between that. But 11-1 to 9-3, to me, you're never going to win that if you're the 9-3 team, unless the 11-1 team is like a group of 5 team. That's the reality. I was fully confident on Sunday that Alabama. I predicted all. Obviously, I didn't say it on here. I said it in a group chat I have with my friends. I predicted every single matchup, every single seeding, literally 10 minutes after the last championship game ended on Saturday night. It wasn't that difficult. I don't understand. I thought it was hilarious that I was seeing all their seeding predictions, and they're like, oh, Texas, they're going to fall back to the 7 seed. Oh, Penn State, they might fall back to the 8 seed. This might mean Ohio State gets the 5 seed, or Notre Dame gets the 5 seed. Are you on drugs? The committee told you they're not going to punish a team if they lose the SEC championship because they played an extra game compared to the teams that sat at home. They told you that. And it's like one ear out the other for all of you. Texas was always going to be 5 if they lost, unless Oregon lost. Penn State was going to be 6. Notre Dame 7. That's how it was always going to go. Ohio State was never going higher than 8. They weren't, unless maybe Georgia lost. They were never going higher. Although it wasn't, I don't even remember. Was Georgia behind Ohio State? I don't even remember. It was always going to be Ohio State, Tennessee. And I can make the argument it should be in Knoxville instead of in Columbus, but it is what it is. You guys got to listen. Penn State clearly got the good draw here. I mean, you get SMU round 1, Boise State round 2. I mean, okay, just freebies all around. Although I think Georgia has it pretty good. I'm not too worried. If I'm Georgia, I'm not too worried about Notre Dame or Indiana. I think Notre Dame will win that game, but I'm not too worried about Notre Dame. And then Penn State, please. Penn State can't win a big game. James Franklin versus Kirby Smart in a big game. Don't make me laugh. Don't make me laugh. If there's any team I feel bad for, it's Oregon. I mean, congrats, Oregon. You got the 1 seed, and your reward is you face the winner of Tennessee, Ohio State. Whoop-de-frickin-do for that, huh? I'm not going to give obviously, I'm going to give my full predictions for the playoff when we get closer to the first round games. But I might have a saucy little pick for that Tennessee-Ohio State game. By the way, I know a lot of people were kind of crapping on these first round games, saying, oh, these are all going to be blowouts. They're not going to be that good. I wouldn't be too sure of that. I've already said that I could totally see SMU beating Penn State because James Franklin's James Franklin. And I think Tennessee-Ohio State is going to be a great game. Notre Dame, Indiana is one I actually think is the most likely to be blowout. I could see Notre Dame blowing out Indiana. Indiana is so fraudulent, it's insane. But I look at this Texas-Clemson game, and I'm telling you right now, this game is not going to be a blowout. All these people who think, oh, Texas by 40, Texas is going to blow out Dabo. I wouldn't be too sure about that. I don't think Texas is going to lose. It's at Texas in Austin. I don't think Clemson's good enough offensively to score a bunch of points against that Texas defense. But let me just ask you a question. What you just saw from Quinn Ewers and this Texas offense, that Texas running game against Georgia and their defense, how much better do you think that's going to be against Clemson's defense? Clemson's defense is very good. That defensive line for Clemson, very good. Texas could very easily not be able to run the ball against Clemson. And then you're looking at them in a similar spot. Do I think Texas will lose to Clemson? No. Do I think that Texas is going to win by more than 3 touchdowns? By 3 or more touchdowns? Absolutely not. I could see this game being tied at halftime. I could see Texas only having like a 3-point lead going into the fourth quarter. I'm just saying. You got to watch out for these games. You got to. They're going to be sneaky. Oh man, but I do feel very good about my playoff predictions before my national championship prediction before the season started. Um, which, if anyone remembers, it was Oregon, Georgia was my prediction. So I feel very good about that. They're on opposite sides of the bracket, so the only way for them to play each other would be the national championship. So yeah, we'll see about that. Uh, let's see. Let's talk transfer portal, huh? Let's talk transfer portal. We've had a ton go down. I've been following the transfer portal Instagram page. It's just because today was the official first day the transfer portal has opened, and we've had a ton. Jackson Arnold, quarterback of Oklahoma, entered the transfer portal. Prediction came out for him. It looks like he might be going to Mississippi State to join Jeff Lebby. I think that'd be a huge get for Mississippi State. Um, who else? Ole Miss quarterback Walker Howard entered the transfer portal. And I know a prediction came out of him going to Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. I like that move for him. He needs to go to a group of five school and get his stock up and actually play some football. A little underrated one, by the way, Isaiah World, who's an offensive tackle out of Nevada, or he plays for Nevada. He allowed 0 sacks this year. He's an amazing offensive tackle. He entered the transfer portal today. I could totally see him going to a big time school. We'll see exactly where. I would love for Georgia to get him. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Had some Georgia players in the transfer portal. Georgia safety David Daniel Sisavan has entered the transfer portal. He was a backup depth piece guy. He never really played. He played very little, only when people were injured. That one's not too surprising. The main one that was surprising was, well, I don't know if necessarily surprising, but Georgia freshman wide receiver Nitro Tuggle is planning to enter the transfer portal. Um, I mean, look, definitely a loss that might hurt a little for Georgia. He wasn't getting much play time, and to be honest, if I'm him, can I really blame him? I'm out here watching my teammate Arian Smith, who can't catch a cold. He's playing over me. I mean, give me a break. And the little that Nitro Tuggle did play for Georgia, he played really well. But I would imagine that Georgia's not going to feel that loss too much because Georgia, from what I'm seeing and hearing, is going heavily after wide receivers in the transfer portal. Stanford freshman quarterback Ashton Daniels has a prediction out for him. Looks like he might be going to the Auburn Tigers, which should be a good get for Hugh Freeze and Auburn. I'm a little surprised that they aren't going for Caden Salter. I thought that was a lock, to be honest with you, and they might still go for him. You never know. But I know that Caden Salter currently has visits planned to Syracuse, Colorado, and Florida State. I don't know what the Kyle McCord situation at Syracuse is. I mean, if he leaves for the draft, then I would love Caden Salter at Syracuse. Caden Salter at Colorado, I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like they should just start Julian Lewis immediately. And then Florida State could use literally anybody and everybody. This one's a little weird. UAB quarterback Jacob Zeno has a prediction out to Texas A&M. I don't know why he would go to Texas A&M when Marcel Reed is going to be the starter of the future. That just would make 0 sense to me. But I don't know everything. Georgia wide receiver Michael Jackson III is planning to enter the transfer portal. He was a wide receiver that transferred to us actually last season from USC. I would imagine it just didn't work out for him here. Because he would have played if he was any good. So he was, again, a depth piece. We already know, by the way, Julian Humphrey, he's leaving. Good. He's a bum. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 more times. He's a bum. He's a bum. He's a bum. Is there anyone else interesting? Let's see. Let's see. I'm going through this transfer portal page. There's just a ton, obviously, because it's like the transfer portal opened and they just came rolling in. Looks like Miller Moss has visits lined up to Missouri and Louisville. I would like him at both those schools. That makes sense for him. Let's see, who's this? Oh, Barry and Brown, Kentucky from wide receiver, super fast guy. Looks like the teams to watch for him are LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Florida State. I would imagine Florida State's going to be listed for a lot of these guys because they need everything because they're trash. Um, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and LSU. I mean, all three of those make sense. Stay in the SEC type of thing. I know Dane Key, the other wide receiver from Kentucky. He was apparently on the phone with Georgia earlier today. So I think it's kind of a lock that that's where Dane Key's going to end up. He's going to end up at Georgia. He's a really good wide receiver, really good player, and Georgia could really use him. There was another one. I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head. He's a Georgia Tech wide receiver, Eric Singleton Jr. I just remembered it. Eric Singleton Jr., really good receiver out of Georgia Tech, had a really good season this year. He's entering the transfer portal. He apparently is going to be a top target for Georgia. And apparently, he already has a visit lined up with Georgia. So that's great to hear. You see, and I also see this one where schools to watch for Caden Salter: Auburn, Indiana, Syracuse again, and Vanderbilt. Caden Salter at Vanderbilt might be magical. I'm just going to say it now. That might be magical. So, yeah, a lot of things going down in the transfer portal. Let's see what the newest one is. Oklahoma State safety / linebacker Kendall Daniels plans to enter the transfer portal. He had 240 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 13 pass deflections, 5 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles in 3 seasons. That's fine. It's fine. He'll go somewhere. He received freshman All-American and Big 12 Newcomer of the Year honors in 2022. Okay. Wisconsin quarterback Tyler Van Dyke entering the transfer portal. That's not surprising. I don't know where he's going to end up going. Had some Miami guys into the transfer portal. Running back, I don't even know how you say his name, Ajay Allen or Ajay Allen, and corner Robert Stafford III. Interesting. Looks like running back from Louisiana Monroe, Ahmad Hardy, has a visit to Ole Miss. Good for him. Good for him. Anyone else? Oh, Louisiana Monroe quarterback General Booty enters the transfer portal. I kind of want him on Georgia just for name alone, just so I can say I have General Booty on my team. Just going to be honest. North Texas quarterback Chandler Morris plans to enter the transfer portal. Oh, gosh. USC defensive lineman Bear Alexander. This guy, he was at Georgia, then transferred to USC. Now he's going to transfer again. I mean, give me a break with this guy. I know Alabama has had a ton of transfers come in today. Wide receiver Kendrick Law. Wide receiver Kobe Prentice, which is interesting. I would not mind Kobe Prentice at UGA. Offensive lineman Nikhil Betrand. Defensive lineman Hunter Osborne. Just one after another Alabama guys. Let's see, does it say anywhere for where they're going to go? No, it doesn't. Any other Alabama guys? Here's the Georgia Tech one, Eric Singleton. Yeah, he was really good this year. Any more Alabama guys? Because we love to see their downfall. Well, we're here for that. NC State wide receiver Kevin Concepcion entering the transfer portal. He's really good. And we knew he was going to enter the transfer portal. Please, Georgia, go get him and Zachariah Branch. I would just be in heaven if that happened. Oh, South Alabama true freshman running back Fluff Bothwell has entered the transfer portal. He actually had a really good season. I could see him going to a really good school. He was a star freshman running back for them. Another Alabama guy. Tight end Danny Lewis. That sounds like a creative player. Just going to be honest. All right, well, I'm not going to go through, obviously, every single transfer portal person. That would take forever, and they're going to continue to come out, so what's the point? I will have another episode out on Friday, probably talking more transfer portal, talking any other news that may come out. Maybe I'll go over some other bowl games that got announced. We'll see. But yeah, I hope everyone has a tremendous day, and go Dogs.